I found out my coworker had been writing about me online, before I even realized I was part of his story. It sounds dramatic when I say it like that, but at the time, it didn't feel like drama. It felt confusing, quietly unsettling. The kind of thing that sneaks up on you and then refuses to leave your head. My name's Oscar. I'm 26, working a pretty average office job at a marketing firm. Nothing exciting: mails, deadlines, awkward coffee machine conversations. The kind of place where people say, "Happy Monday," and you can't tell if they mean it or not. And then there was Brandon. Brandon worked 2 desks behind me. Same department, same age range, same general routine. He wasn't loud or attention-seeking. Actually, he was the opposite. Kept to himself mostly. Headphones in, focused, polite when spoken to, but never the one to start conversations. If you asked me back then what I thought about him, I would have said something like, "He's chill. A little quiet. That's it." Which is funny, considering I had been reading his thoughts for months without even knowing it. It started with a blog. I don't even remember how I found it. Probably one of those late-night scrolling sessions when you fall down a rabbit hole and suddenly it's 2 a.m., and you're reading something way too personal for a stranger to have posted online. The blog was anonymous. No name, no photos, nothing identifiable. Just stories. First person, honest, raw in a way that didn't feel fake or exaggerated. It felt like someone just talking. Like a friend confessing things they wouldn't say out loud. That's what hooked me. The writing wasn't perfect. Sometimes messy. Sometimes repetitive. But it felt real. And that mattered more. Most of the posts were about everyday life. Work frustrations, awkward social situations, random observations. But every now and then, there were these moments, small, specific interactions with someone. A coworker. At first, I didn't think much of it. Everyone writes about coworkers. It's the safest topic in the world. But there was something about the way he described this one guy that stuck with me. He never named him. Just little details. The way he leans back in his chair when he's thinking. The way he says, "Yeah, that makes sense," even when he clearly disagrees. The way he looks tired, but still tries to smile at people. I remember reading that and pausing. Because it felt familiar. But I brushed it off. Coincidence, right? Offices are full of the same types of people. You can match those traits to anyone. Still, I kept reading. It became part of my routine. Wake up, check emails, scroll the blog during lunch, read new posts before bed. It was weirdly comforting. Like following someone's life in the background of your own. And then the posts started getting more specific. Not in an obvious way. Just sharper. The guy from work stayed late again today. He always does that when something's bothering him. He thinks no one notices when he skips lunch, but it's obvious. I don't think he realizes how easy he is to read. That one stuck with me longer than it should have. Because I had skipped lunch that day. I remember sitting at my desk, staring at the screen, trying to shake the feeling that I was being watched. Not in a creepy way. Just noticed. More than I was used to. But still, I didn't connect it. Not fully. Not yet. The moment everything clicked was stupidly simple. It was a Thursday. Late afternoon. Everyone was half dead, counting minutes until the end of the day. I had a headache, my inbox was a mess, and I was leaning back in my chair, staring at the ceiling like I was trying to find answers up there. That's when I heard Brandon's voice behind me. "Long day?" I turned around, a little surprised. He didn't usually start conversations. "Yeah," I said, rubbing my eyes. "You ever get that feeling where your brain just stops working?" He gave a small smile. Not big, not exaggerated. Just enough. "Yeah," he said. "More often than I'd like." There was a pause. Not awkward, just quiet. Then he added, almost casually, "You should probably eat something." I frowned slightly. "What? You skipped lunch, right?" My stomach dropped. It wasn't dramatic. Just a subtle shift. Like something inside me clicked out of place. Yeah, I said slowly. How'd you know? He shrugged, looking back at his screen. Just noticed. That was it. No big deal. No weird tone. Just a simple answer. But my mind was already racing. Because I had read that exact sentence before. Word for word. That night, I went straight to the blog. Scrolled through the recent posts, my heart beating faster with every second. And then I found it. The guy from work skipped lunch again today. He thinks no one notices, but it's obvious. I just sat there, staring at the screen. Reading it over and over like it would somehow change. It didn't. And for the first time, I felt it. That strange, creeping realization. This wasn't a coincidence. It couldn't be. Because suddenly, every little detail lined up. The timing of the posts. The descriptions. The way the writer noticed things no one else did. The way Brandon noticed things. I leaned back in my chair, running a hand through my hair, trying to make sense of it. Trying to tell myself I was overthinking. But deep down, I already knew. I had been reading his thoughts about me for months. And the worst part? I didn't know how much he had noticed. Or how much he hadn't said yet. I didn't sleep that night. Not even close. I just lay there staring at the ceiling, phone still in my hand, the blog page burned into my mind. Every sentence I had ever read suddenly felt different. Like I had been looking at something harmless, and now I was seeing what it actually was. Or who it was. Brandon. The quiet guy sitting 2 desks behind me. The one who barely talked unless he had to. The one I never really paid attention to, at least, not in any meaningful way. Except apparently, he had been paying attention to me. A lot more than I realized. I kept replaying every interaction we'd ever had, trying to find the moment I should have noticed. There had to be something obvious. Some sign. But the truth was, there wasn't. That's what made it worse. He hadn't been obvious. He hadn't been weird or intrusive. He just observed. Quietly. Carefully. Like he was collecting pieces of something I didn't even know I was giving away. And somehow, that felt more intense than if he had just been staring at me all day. Because it meant he understood things. Things I didn't say out loud. The next morning, I almost called in sick. I actually had my phone in my hand, thumb hovering over my manager's name, ready to type out some excuse. Headache. Food poisoning. Anything. But I didn't. I don't know why. Maybe curiosity. Maybe something else. So I went in. And the second I walked into the office, I felt it. Nothing had changed. Same desks, same people, same low hum of keyboards and quiet conversations. But everything felt different. Because now I knew. My eyes flicked toward Brandon's desk before I could stop myself. He was already there. Headphones in, focused on his screen like always. Completely normal. Like he hadn't unknowingly flipped my entire perspective upside down the night before. For a second, I just stood there, watching him. Trying to match the person I saw in real life with the voice I had been reading for months. It didn't line up. The blog felt open. Honest. Sometimes even vulnerable. Brandon didn't. He felt closed off. Controlled. Like everything about him was carefully measured. Except, apparently it wasn't. I forced myself to look away and walk to my desk, trying to act normal. Trying to be normal. But it was impossible. Because now every little thing stood out. The way he glanced up for a second when I sat down, like he was checking if I was there. The way he paused for half a second longer than necessary before looking back at his screen. The way he noticed. I opened my laptop, staring at my inbox without actually reading anything. My mind was somewhere else entirely. Should I say something? The thought hit me out of nowhere. It felt insane. Confronting him? About an anonymous blog he never claimed was his? About something I technically wasn't supposed to know? Yeah. Definitely insane. But at the same time, how was I supposed to just ignore it? I had been reading his thoughts about me, about the way I act, the things I do without realizing, the parts of myself I don't even pay attention to. And now I was sitting here like nothing happened? No way. Still, I didn't say anything. Not that day. Or the next. I told myself I needed to be sure. That I couldn't just jump to conclusions based on a gut feeling and a few. But deep down, I already knew. I just needed proof. So I started paying attention. Not in an obvious way. I wasn't staring at him or anything. Just observing. The same way he had been observing me. It felt strange. Almost like I was stepping into his role without meaning to. I noticed the small things first. The way he typed fast, but precise. Barely any mistakes. The way he always had a cup of coffee, but never actually finished it. The way he stayed late. Not every day, but often enough to be noticeable. And then I started comparing it to the blog. The office is quieter after 6 p.m. feels easier to think. I keep making coffee and forgetting about it. I don't mind staying late. It's the only time everything slows down. Every line matched perfectly. And that should have been enough. But it wasn't. Because there was still a part of me that didn't want to believe it. Not fully. Until Friday. That was the day everything shifted. I had stayed late. Not on purpose. Just got caught up in work and didn't realize how much time had passed until the office started emptying out. By the time I looked up, it was just me and him. Of course. I exhaled quietly, leaning back in my chair. Of course. I muttered under my breath. What? His voice. Closer than I expected. I turned my head slightly, and there he was standing near my desk, one hand resting on the edge of it. I hadn't even heard him walk over. Nothing, I said quickly. Just tired. He nodded like that made sense. Yeah. It's been a long week. There was that pause again. That quiet, almost comfortable silence. But this time, it felt different. He didn't move away. Didn't go back to his desk. He just stood there. Looking at me. Not intensely. Not in a way that would make anyone else uncomfortable. But I felt it. Because now I knew what that look meant. Or at least, what it could mean. You always stay this late? I asked, mostly to fill the silence. He shrugged slightly. Sometimes. Why? The question slipped out before I could stop it. He hesitated. Just for a second. But I saw it. And something about that hesitation made my chest tighten. Easier to focus, he said finally. The exact same answer. My heart started beating faster. This was it. This was the moment where I could either keep pretending, or actually do something. I swallowed, forcing myself to stay calm. Yeah, I said slowly. Makes sense. Another pause. And then. You do that thing a lot. I blinked. What thing? He tilted his head slightly. That, he said. When you're thinking too much. You go quiet for a second, then you say something simple to cover it up. My breath caught. Because that was straight from the blog. Not word for word. But close enough. Too close. I stared at him, my mind racing, trying to decide if this was really happening. If he realized what he was saying. If he knew that I knew. Do I? I said, trying to sound casual. Yeah. He said it so easily. Like it was obvious. Like he had been noticing it for a long time. And suddenly, I couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't sit there and pretend I didn't understand what was going on. So I leaned back in my chair, looking up at him properly. And before I could talk myself out of it, I said, I read your blog. Silence. Real silence this time. Not the easy kind. Not the comfortable kind. The kind that hits all at once and just stays there. Brandon didn't move. Didn't react right away. But I saw it. That tiny shift in his expression. The way his jaw tightened just slightly. The way his eyes flickered for a second before settling back on me. And in that moment, I knew I was right. For a second, I thought he was going to deny it. That would have been the easy way out. Just laugh it off, say I got the wrong idea, maybe even act confused enough that I'd start doubting myself. Honestly, I was half expecting that. It would have made things simpler. But Brandon didn't do that. He just stood there, completely still, looking at me in a way I had never seen before. Not calm, not distant, not the usual controlled version of him I was used to. This was different. Like something had cracked, just slightly. I read your blog, I repeated, quieter this time. Not pushing. Just confirming that I wasn't taking it back. His jaw tightened again, and he let out a slow breath through his nose. Still no immediate answer. Which, somehow, was worse than a denial. Because it felt like confirmation. How long? He asked finally. His voice was steady. Too steady. The kind of steady that only happens when someone is actively trying to keep control. I swallowed. Few months, I admitted. That was the moment something in his expression shifted. Not anger. Not embarrassment. Something sharper. Okay, he said. Just that. Okay. I blinked. That's it. What do you want me to say? I let out a quiet, almost disbelieving laugh. I don't know, maybe something like, yeah, that's mine, or you're completely wrong, Oscar. I've never written anything in my life? At the sound of his name in my voice, something flickered again in his eyes. God, this was weird. He ran a hand through his hair, looking away for the first time since I said it. And that alone felt like an answer. You weren't supposed to find it, he muttered. There it was. Not a denial. Not even an excuse. Just that. I leaned back in my chair, exhaling slowly. Yeah, I said. I figured. Silence settled between us again, heavier this time. But now it wasn't empty. Now it was full of everything that had been unspoken before. I didn't know it was you, I added after a moment. Not at first. I know. I frowned slightly. You know? He glanced at me, then away again. You would have acted differently. That hit harder than I expected. Because he was right. If I had known from the beginning, yeah, I definitely wouldn't have been so comfortable reading all of it. I wouldn't have treated it like just another anonymous story. I would have seen him in it. And that would have changed everything. Why didn't you ever say anything? I asked. The question had been sitting in my chest since last night. It came out quieter than I expected. More personal. He let out a short breath, almost like a humorless laugh. About what? I gestured vaguely between us. About this. About me being in it. His eyes flicked back to mine, sharper this time. You think I was going to walk up to you and say, hey, by the way, I write about you online? Okay. Fair. When he said it like that, it sounded insane. Still. You could have stopped, I said. That one landed. I saw it. A slight tension in his shoulders. A pause before he answered. I didn't think you'd ever find it. That's not really an answer. Another pause. This one longer. And then. I didn't want to. There it was. Honest. Direct. No way to twist it into something harmless. My chest tightened. Why? I don't even know why I asked. Maybe I wanted him to say something simple. Something I could brush off. Something that wouldn't make this feel so personal. But Brandon wasn't the kind of person who gave easy answers. He hesitated again. And this time, when he looked at me, there was something different in his expression. Something more exposed. Because I like noticing things about you, he said. My breath caught. He didn't look away. Didn't soften it. Just let the words sit there, exactly as they were. And writing it down, he continued quieter now, makes it easier to deal with. Deal with what? That came out faster than I expected. Almost automatic. He held my gaze for a second longer. Then looked down. with the fact that I shouldn't be paying that much attention in the first place. Silence. Heavy. Loud in a way silence shouldn't be. I felt my heart beating harder than it should have been for a conversation like this. Because suddenly, this wasn't just about a blog anymore. This was about why. About everything behind it. You make it sound like it's a bad thing, I said carefully. It is. The answer came too fast. Too firm. I frowned. Why? He let out a slow breath, clearly annoyed now. Not at me. At himself. Because it's not normal to analyze someone like that, he said. To notice every little thing they do. He stopped himself, jaw tightening. To what? I pushed. He shook his head slightly. Forget it. No, I said, sitting up a little straighter. You don't get to just stop there. His eyes snapped back to mine. And for the first time since this started, he looked almost frustrated. You really want to know? He asked. There was something in his tone. A warning. But I didn't back down. Yeah, I said. A beat of silence. Then. Because I think about you more than I should. The words landed between us like something physical. Like they had weight. And suddenly, everything made sense. The blog. The way he noticed things. The way he looked at me when he thought I wasn't paying attention. All of it. I swallowed, my throat suddenly dry. More than you should? I repeated. He let out a quiet, sharp breath. Yeah. Another pause. And then, quieter. A lot more. I didn't know what to say to that. Didn't know how to respond. Because this had gone way past what I expected. Way past a weird coincidence. This was something else. Something real. And the worst part? I wasn't sure I hated it. Not even a little. I should have said something right away. Something clear. Something that would either shut it down or, I don't know, define it. But I didn't. I just sat there, staring at him, trying to process what he just said. Because there's a difference between suspecting something and actually hearing it out loud. And now there was no pretending. No. Maybe I misunderstood. No. It's just in my head. It wasn't. He said it. I think about you more than I should. That sentence kept replaying in my mind, over and over, like my brain didn't know what to do with it. So, I finally said, my voice quieter than I intended. What does that mean? Brandon let out a breath, like he'd been holding it in. I think you know what it means. I shook my head slightly. No. I want to hear you say it. That was probably a mistake. Because something shifted in his expression again. Not hesitation this time. Something more decisive. Like he was done holding back. You really want me to spell it out? He asked. There was a slight edge to his voice now. Not aggressive. Just tense. Yeah, I said. A pause. And then. I like you, Oscar. Simple. Direct. No overthinking. No extra explanation. Just that. And somehow, that hit harder than everything else combined. I felt my chest tighten again, but this time it wasn't confusion. It was something sharper. Something I couldn't immediately name. Because the truth was, I hadn't thought this far ahead. I hadn't expected this conversation to go here. To become this real, this fast. And now I was sitting in front of him, trying to figure out what I felt, while he was already there. Already certain. How long? I asked, almost automatically. He huffed a quiet breath. I don't know. A while. A while didn't feel like enough. Before the blog? He hesitated. Yeah. That made my stomach drop slightly. So this hadn't just started recently. This had been building. For months. Maybe longer. And you just wrote about it? I asked. It wasn't about that at first, he said quickly. It was just observations. Things I noticed. It helped me get it out of my head. And then? He looked at me again. And then it stopped being just that. Of course it did. I ran a hand through my hair, exhaling slowly. This was a lot. Too much, too fast. But at the same time, there was something else under it. Something I didn't want to ignore. Why me? I asked. That one slipped out without thinking. But once it was out there, I didn't take it back. Because I genuinely didn't understand. Brandon frowned slightly, like the question didn't make sense to him. What do you mean? I mean, I gestured vaguely, a little frustrated now. You barely talk to me. We're not even that close. So why? Because you're easy to notice. He cut me off. Again. Simple. Direct. Like it was obvious. I blinked. That's your answer? It's part of it. Okay, then what's the rest? He exhaled slowly, clearly thinking about how to explain it. And for the first time since this started, he looked unsure. Not guarded. Not controlled. Just unsure. You don't try to be anything, he said finally. Most people here do. They act a certain way, say the right things, pretend they're fine even when they're not. And I don't? I asked. He shook his head slightly. No. You're honest. Even when you don't mean to be. I frowned. I'm pretty sure I act like everyone else. You don't. He said it so confidently it caught me off guard. You think you hide things? He continued. Like when you're stressed, or tired, or annoyed. But you don't. Not really. I opened my mouth to argue, but nothing came out. Because part of me knew he was right. I just didn't like hearing it like that. And that's why you like me? I asked, quieter now. It's one of the reasons. One of? He hesitated again. And this time, I saw something I hadn't seen before. Nervousness. Actual, real nervousness. You're also. He started, then stopped. I waited. You're just you. He finished, like that explained everything. I let out a quiet, almost disbelieving breath. That's not an explanation, Brandon. I know. Then explain it. He looked at me for a second longer. Then. I feel different when I'm around you. That one landed. Hard. Because there was no analyzing that. No overthinking it. It was just honest. And suddenly, I didn't know where to look. So I looked down at my desk, my fingers tapping lightly against the surface. Trying to ground myself. Trying to think. But my thoughts were a mess. Because here's the thing. I should have felt uncomfortable. This should have been weird. Too intense. Too much. And yeah, it was intense. But uncomfortable? Not really. If anything, I felt aware. Of him. Of myself. Of everything between us. Which was probably worse. Say something, he said quietly. I looked up. He was still standing there, but now there was something else in his expression. Uncertainty. Like he wasn't as sure anymore. Like he was waiting. And that did something to me. Because up until now, he had been the one in control. The one who understood things before I did. But now he was just as exposed as I was. I don't know what to say, I admitted. Honest. Just like he had been. His jaw tightened slightly, but he nodded. Okay. That was it. Okay. And then he stepped back. Just one step. But it felt like more. Like he was already putting distance between us. Like he was giving me an out. And for a second, I almost took it. Almost let him walk away and pretend this never happened. But something in me didn't want that. Didn't want to go back to before. So before I could overthink it. Wait. He stopped. Looked at me again. And I swallowed, my heart beating a little faster than it should have been. I don't hate it, I said. The words felt strange coming out of my mouth. Unfamiliar. But true. His expression shifted instantly. Don't hate what? This, I said, gesturing between us again. What you said? The blog. All of it. Silence. But not the heavy kind. Something lighter. Something different. You don't? He asked. And there it was again. That uncertainty. That slight edge of hope he was trying not to show. I shook my head slowly. No. A pause. Then, quieter. It's just a lot. He let out a breath, like he'd been holding it in for too long. Yeah, he said. I know. We stood there for a second, just looking at each other. No pretending. No pretending we didn't know what this was anymore. And for the first time since this started, it didn't feel confusing. It felt like something had finally clicked into place. Even if I didn't fully understand what came next. That moment should have been the end of it. Or at least, a pause. Something where we both just nodded, went home, pretended to think things through like normal people. But that's not what happened. Because once everything was out in the open, it was like neither of us knew how to go back to acting normal. We stayed there. In that almost empty office. Looking at each other like we were both waiting for the other one to decide what this was. So, what now? I asked. It felt like a stupid question the second I said it, but I didn't have anything better. Brandon exhaled quietly, glancing away for a second before looking back at me. I don't know, he admitted. That surprised me. You don't know? A small, almost self-aware smile appeared on his face. Not everything is planned out in my head, Oscar. Could have fooled me, I muttered. That actually made him huff a quiet laugh. And just like that, the tension shifted. Not gone. But lighter. More real. I leaned back in my chair again, studying him. It was weird. I felt like I was seeing him for the first time. Not just Brandon from work, but the version of him I had been reading all this time. The one who noticed everything. The one who thought too much. The one who apparently thought about me more than he should. And now I couldn't unsee it. You're different, I said without thinking. He raised an eyebrow slightly. Different how? I hesitated, trying to find the right words. I don't know, just less quiet than I thought you were. He looked at me for a second, then let out a soft breath. I was never that quiet. Yeah, you were. No. He shook his head slightly. I just didn't say things out loud. That made sense. Too much sense. I exhaled slowly, my fingers tapping lightly against the desk again. That habit. The one he had already called out. And I caught him noticing it. Of course he did. You're doing it again, he said. I rolled my eyes slightly. Yeah? I get it. I think too much. You do. Maybe you're just too observant. Also true. That almost made me smile. Almost. Another pause settled in, but this time it wasn't uncomfortable. It felt charged. Like something was building again. And I knew exactly what it was. I just didn't know what to do with it. So, I said, shifting slightly in my chair, you've been writing about me for months. He winced a little. When you say it like that, it sounds bad. It is a little bad. I know. But, I tilted my head slightly, studying him. It's also kind of. I trailed off. He frowned. Kind of what? I hesitated. This felt like stepping into something I didn't fully understand yet. But I said it anyway. Intimate. That word hung in the air between us. And I saw it hit him. Not like a shock. More like recognition. Yeah, he said quietly. It is. Silence again. But heavier. Closer. I shifted in my chair, suddenly very aware of how close he was standing to me. Of the fact that we were alone. Of the fact that this conversation had crossed into something that definitely wasn't just coworker talk anymore. You ever write about this? I asked. His eyes flicked to mine instantly. No. Why not? Because this is happening now, he said simply. That made my chest tighten again. God, he had a way of saying things that just landed. No extra words. No overcomplication. Just straight to the point. And what happens now? I asked again, quieter this time. He didn't answer right away. He stepped a little closer instead. Not enough to be obvious, but enough that I noticed. Enough that I felt it. I think, he started, his voice lower now. That depends on you. On me. Of course it did. Because he had already said everything. Put everything out there. Now it was my turn. And I wasn't ready for that. Not fully. But I also wasn't walking away. That much was clear. I stood up slowly, closing the small distance between us without really thinking about it. Now we were close. Close enough that I could see the slight tension in his expression again. Close enough that I could feel the shift in the air. You're really not subtle, you know that? I said. He let out a quiet breath. I was never trying to be. Yeah, I muttered. I figured that out. Another pause. Shorter this time. Tighter. And then. Did you ever write about what you'd do if I found out? I asked. That caught him off guard. I saw it immediately. No, he said. Why not? Because I didn't think this would happen. Right, I said softly. Of course. Neither did I. But here we were. Standing too close. Talking about things we definitely weren't supposed to be talking about. And not stopping. You're still doing it, he said quietly. What? Thinking too much. I exhaled, letting out a small, almost frustrated laugh. Yeah, well, can you blame me? No. His voice was softer now. Closer. And before I could stop myself. Then stop me. The words came out before I could think them through. And the second they did, I felt it. That shift. That line being crossed. Brandon didn't move right away. But his eyes. They changed. Darker. More focused. Like something clicked into place for him too. You're sure? He asked. Low. Careful. Like he was giving me one last chance to take it back. I should've. I really should've. But I didn't. I just nodded slightly. And that was enough. Because the next thing I knew, he stepped closer. Close enough that there was no space left between us. And for a split second, either of us moved. Just stood there. Breathing the same air. Waiting. And then. He closed the distance. And kissed me. It wasn't rushed. Wasn't aggressive. Just intentional. Like everything else about him. And my brain. Yeah, it completely stopped working. Just like I said it does. Except this time, I didn't try to cover it up. I just let it happen. I didn't pull away. That was the first thing I realized. Not after a second. Not after thinking it through. Not even out of curiosity. I just didn't. And that alone should have told me everything. The kiss wasn't intense at first. It was slow. Careful. Like he was still giving me time to stop him if I wanted to. But I didn't. If anything, I leaned into it. Just slightly. Enough for him to notice. And the second he did, something shifted. His hand moved hesitant at first, then more certain, resting lightly against my side, like he was grounding himself. Or maybe grounding me. I wasn't sure anymore. My brain had completely checked out. All I could focus on was the fact that this was happening. That he was the one kissing me. Brandon. The quiet, observant guy who had been writing about me for months like I was some kind of pattern he couldn't figure out. And now I was standing here, proving him right. Because I wasn't stopping him. I wasn't pushing him away. I was doing the opposite. When we finally pulled back, it wasn't sudden. It was slow. Like neither of us really wanted to be the one to break it. I opened my eyes, realizing at some point I had closed them. He was still right there. Close. Closer than before. And now there was no pretending this was anything but what it was. That, I started, then stopped. Great. Real smooth. He watched me, his expression unreadable again, but not in the same way as before. Now it felt softer. Yeah, he said quietly. Yeah, I repeated, because apparently my vocabulary had just downgraded to one word. There was a small pause. And then, "You didn't overthink that," he said. I let out a short breath, somewhere between a laugh and disbelief. "Give me a second. I'm about to." That actually made him smile. Not a small one this time. A real one. And that did something weird to my chest. Because I realized I had never seen that before. Not like this. Not directed at me like this. "Was it okay?" he asked. The question caught me off guard. "What?" "The kiss," he clarified, like he suddenly wasn't sure anymore. "Was it?" "Yeah," I cut him off. Too fast. Too honest. And now he definitely noticed. "Yeah?" he repeated. I exhaled slowly, running a hand through my hair again. "Yeah," I said again, more steady this time. "It was more than okay." That seemed to land. I saw the tension in his shoulders ease just slightly. Good. Because if I was being honest, I didn't want him to pull back now. Which was a problem. A big one. Because this wasn't just some random moment. This was work. This was real life. And now everything was complicated. "You're thinking again," he said. Of course he did. I rolled my eyes slightly. "Can you not call me out every time I do that?" "No." "Great. But you don't have to," he added. I frowned. "Don't have to what?" "Turn this into a problem immediately." I stared at him for a second. "Because that's exactly what I was doing." "Easy for you to say," I muttered. "You've had months to process this." "That doesn't make it easier," he said. "It kind of does." "It doesn't." The way he said it made me pause. Because he wasn't arguing. He was just stating it. Like a fact. "Why not?" I asked. He held my gaze for a second longer. "Because I didn't think it would actually happen." That hit again. And suddenly, I saw it differently. All those posts. All that observing. It wasn't confidence. It wasn't certainty. It was the opposite. It was him trying to deal with something he didn't think would ever go anywhere. And now it had. Because of me. Because I said don't stop me. "Yeah," I said quietly. "Same." A small silence settled between us. But this one felt calm. Not tense. Not heavy. Just real. "So what now?" I asked again. But this time, it sounded different. Less like a problem. More like curiosity. Brandon glanced at me, then down slightly, like he was thinking. "We don't have to figure everything out right now," he said. "That sounds like something I should say, not you." "I know." I huffed a quiet laugh. "Okay, fair." Another pause. And then, "But we should probably not stand this close in the middle of the office," I added. He glanced around, like he had just remembered where we were. "Yeah," he said. "Probably." Neither of us moved. "Of course." "Wow," I muttered. "We're really good at this." "At what?" "Making obvious decisions and not following through." That got another small smile out of him. "Yeah," he said. "Seems like it." I shook my head slightly, stepping back first this time. Just a little. But enough to break that pull between us. Even though I felt it immediately. That space. That distance. And I wasn't sure I liked it. "Okay," I said, trying to sound more normal. "We should go." "Yeah." Neither of us moved again. God, this was ridiculous. "You first," I said. He raised an eyebrow. "Why me?" "Because if I leave first, I'm going to keep thinking about this the entire way home. And if I leave first, I'm still going to think about it," I admitted. "But at least I won't have to pretend I'm not staring at you on the way out." That made him pause. Then, "Good to know," he said quietly. And there was something in his tone again. Something that made my chest tighten in that same, unfamiliar way. "Yeah," I muttered, looking away for a second. He grabbed his things, moving slower than usual. Like he wasn't in a rush to leave either. Then he looked back at me. See you Monday? Simple question. Normal. Except it didn't feel normal anymore. Yeah, I said. A beat. Yeah, see you Monday. And then he left. Just like that. Leaving me alone in the office. Standing there. Still trying to process what just happened. Still feeling it. That kiss. That moment. Everything. I let out a long breath, dropping back into my chair. Yeah, I muttered to myself. I'm definitely not sleeping tonight. I was right. I didn't sleep. Not even a little. I kept replaying everything over and over, like my brain refused to let it settle. Every word. Every look. That moment right before he kissed me. And the fact that I let him. No worse. The fact that I wanted him to. By the time Monday morning rolled around, I was running on maybe 2 hours of broken sleep and way too much. Which was probably the worst possible state to see him again. Because now it wasn't just Brandon from work. Now it was Brandon who kissed me. And somehow, that changed everything. The second I walked into the office, I felt it again. That awareness. Like my body already knew where he was before I even looked. 2 desks behind me. Same as always. I tried not to turn around immediately. Tried to act normal. Failed. Of course I did. I glanced back. And there he was. Already looking at me. Not in a subtle way this time. Not pretending. Just looking. Like he didn't feel the need to hide it anymore. And that. Yeah, that did something to me. Hey, I said, a little quieter than usual. Hey. Same tone. Same calm voice. But there was something under it now. Something we both felt. A pause. Short. But heavy. How was your weekend? He asked. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny. Because it was so normal. So completely out of place after everything that happened. Didn't sleep, I admitted. His lips twitched slightly. Yeah, same. Another pause. And then, just like that, we both turned back to our screens. Like nothing happened. Like we were just coworkers again. Except we weren't. Not even close. The whole morning felt off. Not bad. Just different. Every little thing felt charged. Like there was something just under the surface that we weren't talking about. But we both knew it was there. I found myself hyper-aware of him again. The way he moved. The way he paused before speaking. The way he kept glancing in my direction when he thought I wasn't looking. Except now, I was looking. And he knew it. Around lunchtime, I finally couldn't take it anymore. I stood up, grabbing my phone. I'm getting food, I said, not even turning around. You coming? There was a slight pause behind me. Yeah. Simple. Immediate. I nodded to myself and headed toward the exit, trying to ignore how fast my heart was beating for something as basic as grabbing lunch. We didn't go far. Just a small place around the corner. Nothing special. But the second we sat down across from each other, it hit again. That tension. But stronger now. Because this wasn't the office. There were no screens to hide behind. No work to distract us. Just us. So, I said, leaning back slightly, trying to act more relaxed than I felt. We're really just not going to talk about it. He looked at me for a second. Then. I was waiting for you to bring it up. Of course you were. A small smile. God, that smile? It was starting to become a problem. You're the one who told me to stop you, he said. Yeah, I remember. Silence. Then. I'm not saying I regret it, I added quickly. His expression changed instantly. Not dramatically. But enough. Good, he said. Just that. And somehow, that was enough. I exhaled slowly, tapping my fingers against the table again. He noticed. Obviously. You're doing it again, he said. I groaned softly. I swear, if you keep pointing that out. You'll what? I stopped. Because I didn't actually have an answer. And he knew it. Nothing, I muttered. Exactly? I rolled my eyes, but there was no real annoyance behind it. If anything, I felt comfortable. Which was insane. Because this situation should not feel comfortable. But it did. In a strange, quiet way. So what does this mean? I asked finally. There it was. The question we'd been avoiding. He didn't answer right away. Just looked at me. Thinking. Like he always does. It means something happened, he said. That's not very helpful. I know. Then try again. He exhaled slowly, leaning back slightly. It means I still like you, he said. Direct. Again. Always direct. And? I asked. And? I'm not going to pretend it didn't happen. Fair. Too fair. And me? I asked, quieter now. That one felt bigger. More important. Because this wasn't just about him anymore. This was about me too. He held my gaze for a second longer. Then. You tell me. Of course. Of course he'd do that. Put it back on me. I looked down at the table for a second, trying to sort through the mess in my head. Because the truth was, I didn't have a clean answer. But I had something. I didn't stop you, I said slowly. I noticed. I could've. You didn't. I exhaled. Yeah. A pause. And then. I keep thinking about it. That slipped out before I could filter it. But I didn't take it back. Because it was true. His expression softened slightly. Yeah? He asked. I nodded. Yeah. Silence. But this time, it felt different. Not tense. Not uncertain. Just real. And I don't think I would have done that if I didn't feel something. I added. There it was. Not a full confession. Not a clear label. But enough. More than enough. Because I saw it in his reaction. That small shift. That quiet understanding. That's enough, he said. I looked up. Enough for what? For now. And somehow, that felt right. Like we didn't need to define everything immediately. Like we could just let it be what it was. At least for now. But as I sat there, looking at him, I realized something. This wasn't just going to go away. Not after this. Not after everything. And honestly, I wasn't sure I wanted it to. Things didn't magically become clear after that. There was no moment where everything just clicked into place, and suddenly I knew exactly what this was, what it meant, where it was going. If anything, it got messier. But in a good way. A real way. The rest of that week felt like walking a line we both knew was there, but neither of us wanted to step too hard on. At work, we were normal. Mostly. We still did our jobs. Still sat at our desks. Still talked about deadlines and emails and all the usual boring stuff. But underneath it, there was something else. Something quieter. More intentional. Like every glance meant more than it used to. Like every small interaction carried weight. We didn't talk about the kiss again. Not directly. But it was there. In the way he'd look at me for a second too long. In the way I'd catch myself waiting for him to say something anything that wasn't about work. And then Friday came again. Almost exactly the same as before. Late. Quiet office. Just the two of us. I noticed it first this time. Of course I did. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling for a second before letting out a quiet breath. Déjà vu, I muttered. What? His voice came from behind me again. I smiled slightly. Of course. Nothing, I said, turning around. Just feels familiar. He stepped closer, same as last time. But this time, it wasn't uncertain. You're staying late again, he said. Yeah. Why? I tilted my head slightly. You already know the answer. A small pause. Then, yeah, he said. I do. We looked at each other for a second. And this time, neither of us pretended it was just a normal conversation. So, I started, standing up slowly. You ever write about what happens after the part where everything changes? He watched me carefully. No, he said. That's the part one don't usually get to. My chest tightened slightly. Yeah? Yeah. A pause. And then I stepped closer, closing the distance again. But this time, it felt different. Not like a risk. Not like a question. More like a continuation. Well, I said quietly, you probably should start writing again. He raised an eyebrow slightly. Why? Because this part's kind of important. That got a small smile out of him. And before he could say anything else, I did it first. I kissed him. No hesitation this time. No overthinking. Just action. And yeah, that definitely surprised him. I felt it in the way he froze for half a second before responding. But then he did. Just like before. Except this time, there was no holding back. No testing. It felt certain. When we pulled away, I didn't step back immediately. Neither did he. See? I said quietly. You missed a whole chapter. He let out a soft breath, something close to a laugh. Yeah, he said. I guess I did. Silence. But not empty. Not awkward. Just full. So what happens now? He asked. That question again. But now it didn't feel heavy. Didn't feel like something we needed to solve immediately. I shrugged slightly. I don't know. He watched me. Waiting. But I think, I added, we figure it out as we go. A small pause. Then he nodded. Yeah. Simple. Enough. I glanced at him, then away, then back again. Still getting used to this. To him looking at me like that. To me not wanting him to stop. You're still going to write about it, aren't you? I asked. He smirked slightly. Maybe. Great. I muttered. So now I have to wonder what you're noticing all the time. You always did. Yeah, but now I know about it. Does that make it worse? I thought about that for a second. Then. No. And that surprised me. But it was true. If anything, it made it better. Because now it wasn't one-sided. Now I could see him too. Notice him. Understand him the way he had been understanding me this whole time. Good, he said quietly. Another pause. And then, come on, I said, grabbing my things. Let's get out of here. Yeah. We walked out together this time. Not one after the other. Not pretending. Just together. And as we stepped outside into the cool, I realized something. This wasn't some perfect, clean story. It wasn't simple. It wasn't planned. But it was real. And for once, I wasn't overthinking it. I was just in it. With him. And honestly, that was enough.